In brutal sports football, there are very few rules. In fact, you can remove the referee, turn off the laws of the game, and actually decapitate your opponent's heads to gain the extra man advantage. And what's more, you can use this particular head and score extra points by throwing it in the goal. Yep, it's certainly a game that I adored as a kid growing up on the Amiga, and I later owned on the Atari Jaguar. So today I'm going to look back on the game and see if it holds up today. It's probably fair to say that the Amiga and even the Atari Jaguar boasts deeper and more realistic football games than brutal sports football. However, if you want a quick game of gruesome fun, I do highly recommend it. If you are looking for a more realistic American football game on the Jaguar, let's say, I suppose you could settle for the rather mediocre Troy Aikman NFL. But if you like things a little more rock and roll and ruthless, and looking for a title that doesn't take itself too seriously, you can't really go wrong with this sporting brawler. The game itself is a hybrid between American football and the more traditional soccer, but with a lot less need for rules. You can either pick up and throw the oval-shaped ball or send it flying great distances by booting the ball into orbit. Each match is quite frantic, and the requirement of fancy formations and intricate skills is certainly not the way the game should be played. Smashing into your rivals and timing your flying tackles just right to clear the path to your opponent's goal will help lead your team to victory. In fact, if you cause enough pain to each opponent, they will eventually have their head knocked clean off. This will ultimately mean you're up against fewer players. A nice but quite morose touch in the game is the ability to pick up the severed head and throw it into your opponent's goal. Talk about adding insult to injury. If you fully implement the Vinnie Jones style of playing, you can potentially get the game stopped due to lack of opponents, and you automatically win. I think this is the only real job the referee in-game has, keeping an eye on the amount of heads rolling on the floor. After each game, you not only get a quick breakdown of the final score, but you are also treated to a literal head count score.
As mentioned earlier, the game is not particularly big and only offers a few options and game modes. You can play a quick one-on-one unfriendly with a fellow human or computer opponent. You can expand the game a little bit further with a simple knockout tournament. However, I found myself putting the most hours into the league tournament, where you will compete against the other 10 teams to see who will become the overall league champion. There is also a nice little touch after each game where you find yourself in the locker room, where you need to manage and hopefully heal your stricken players. Amazon, please create a all or nothing documentary on brutal sports football and see what it's like in the locker room.
No! Because in the game is goal! When I lose a duel, I'm upset! When I lose the small side of games, I'm upset! Because that's the fucking standard!
The better you've done it in the previous match, the more energy, the more points you've accumulated, and that will help you recover your players more efficiently. This small management element does add a nice little touch to the game, which does bring a little extra incentive into looking after yourself and not subject your players to too much damage. To add to all the on-pitch anarchy and destruction, there is a large array of interesting power-ups, all helping you to gain the advantage over your opponent. These power-ups include swords for more powerful attacks, shields for added protection, grenades and bombs to help clear the path of any unsuspecting foe. You can also speed up and slow down your opponents by picking up the rabbit or tortoise icon respectively. The running ball power-up is one of the most original, where the ball will suddenly sprout legs and will follow your players. There are also 2 additional power-ups where you tackle a fellow human being. There is the added direction reverse, which swaps all buttons around on your opponent's joypad, and an interesting team swap power that literally swaps each team's controls to each player. Wow, I mean, come on, that is a bit of a head trip. Brutal sports football boasts big, bold and quite in-your-face graphics. When playing the Jaguar version, you can probably tell it doesn't really push the console to its limits. It's basically a carbon copy of the Amiga version. Although saying that, I do quite like the strong colours, and the chunky sprites do fit in pretty well with the overall feel of the game. The players are quite well animated, and the blood-stained arena looks great. I also like how the arena damages itself throughout the match, and that stays there, so at the end of the game you're literally playing on a bloodbath. I actually want to give a quick mention to the goals. They are 3D, they look really well drawn, heavy duty, made out of brick. I mean, it does look pretty cool. Again, the Amiga and Jag version, very similar to each other. It's not going to win, you know, the best graphic awards, but it does fit in well with the game overall, in my opinion. The gameplay is easily one of the biggest plus points of Brutal Sports Football. Even amongst the fast action, the controls of each player are very responsive. There is no greater feeling than lumping the ball from the halfway line, timing your jump just right to catch the ball in mid-air and ploughing through the opponent's defence before scoring an unstoppable goal. The computer AI is also quite clever, and it is clear that some teams have clear strengths and weaknesses over the other teams. The game does boast a solid, if not spectacular, soundtrack, which fits in well with the title's overall look and feel. I did spot though that the Jaguar has in-game music when you're playing a match, whereas the Amiga version is really very bare bones, and you can just hear the sound of the guts and glory and bones breaking. Add in a good mixture of grunts and groans and you will soon find yourself immersed in each match. Truthfully, there could have been a lot more room for more complex game modes. The addition of new teams and even more power-ups would have been very welcome. How about also adding a detailed career mode? This would allow you to take a rough and ready lower league team through the leagues and buying and selling players to help create the ugliest and most fierce squad on the planet. You can't also seem to mix players up, so sometimes you play against gargoyles or goats or humans, and well, I'd love it if each team could have different players and, you know, different sort of breeds and whatnot. Overall though, I really enjoy Brutal Sports Football for what it is. It's quite a fun, quite original sports sim that has often got me coming back for more. What should that be? Gore. Here's a quick run through of how I rate the game. I would give the graphics on the Jaguar 81, probably a bit higher on the Amiga because obviously it's 16-bit. The sound, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's not bad, it's okay. There is music in the Jaguar version, it's not bad, 78 for me. Gameplay 85, there are better games than the Jag truthfully, but it is very playable. Difficulty, when playing the league mode I found it ramping up quite nicely, started quite easy, got tougher, so a good 74% there. Longevity, like I hinted earlier guys, if you want a quick 2-player game with your mate, you can come back quite often. You know, I didn't really play the league mode too often. It was great for 2-player modes, great for 1-player unfriendlies, so 76%. So overall, putting it through the mixer, the computer gives it an overall score of 81%. Highly recommended. Check it out guys, and for a Jaguar game it is still relatively cheap. It's definitely one of the more cheaper priced games on the console, so it should be pretty easy to pick up. Right, see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.